The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. So the show is being broadcast on December 26, 2016, and we're somewhere in the midst between traditional Christmas and the Orthodox Christmas. Definitely the Christmas season. And we're about to start into a new year with a new American administration at the helm. And the question, what happens next, is on many minds. And I couldn't help but see a parallel to the feelings and questions voiced by many NDEers when they return from their visit to the other side. Questions like, what just happened? What did I just see? And perhaps most importantly, why was I chosen? And what do I do now comes to mind. Our guest today is a man who's been asking those questions for a while now, and since he lives near the hospital where I serve as chaplain, I've had the chance to watch his struggles with these questions and even explore the possibility of starting the first local IANS chapter with him at my church here in Bangor, Maine. Robert Osgood, known as Oz, was a successful electrician working in Maine when at age 55 he was suddenly put on restricted duty due to a malfunctioning heart valve. He went through heart surgery, but then sustained a cardiac arrest, multiple organ failures, a 4-day coma, and during which he experienced a number of OBEs and NDEs. And Oz told the story of his experience back on our show of August 22nd, 2016, and then again the following week, August 29th. It's one of the most in-depth experiences we've talked about on the show to date, and it's my pleasure to welcome Oz back to NDE Radio.
Well, good morning, Lee. I'm always happy to be here, and even if this is my third time this year.
I know. This may be some sort of a record, Oz.
Well, I'm fond of the number 3 and 7, and he is too, so 3 is always working for me.
Yes, that's good. Well, Oz, I know you had some doubts about how useful this topic might be for our listeners, and yet I was thinking with over 700, some say estimated 774 reported NDEs happening in this country every day, it seems like it's time to acknowledge there are many of us out there still wondering why we were chosen to experience such a gift. After your NDEs, for example, what were some of the questions you first had about your experience?
Well, like you said earlier, why me? People using the word, you were chosen. And I said, well, why me? And then I can only accept that if I realize that everybody that had that experience was also chosen. In other words, it's not a singular. So many are chosen to spread his messages. That's right. Part of what it's all about. And, it takes time to come to grips with it all. I mean, I'm still struggling 4 years later, trying to get it all on paper and make, a lucid flow so that it's easy to follow and easy to understand. It's not an easy process. I can tell you that.
I know I remember you said one of your first impulses was to write a book, and then the other day you said you were stuck on chapter 3, but, yeah, go on.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you were going to a longer sentence here. Chapter 3 is actually the deepest part of the book. And the main problem I'm having in so many other NDEers, or I like to use the more commonly accepted acronym now, ADEs, that's becoming more and more popular amongst many NDEs because that just stands for actual death experience instead of near. So many of us just never were totally calm with near because we were clinically dead. So that's now the new catchphrase is now ADE. I'm seeing a lot of that online. So that's a transition, in a sense. So many transformations are going on. You've asked me in the past, what kind of changes. And my next question would be for you, well, how much time do we have? I mean, there's been that many changes, going from an open heart patient to an open heart person. That's the single biggest change that I have to acknowledge, because I see it every day, in the way that I approach things and in the way that I see things has totally changed.
Now, you reacted almost immediately to what had happened, and you felt these changes coming on. In other cases, including myself, it took, upwards of 20 years for me to begin to talk about what I'd seen and to make a difference in my outlook on life. I wonder, and this still goes on. I still meet people who've had this long period of time where they're sort of, it's like a chicken sitting on an egg waiting for it to hatch. And why do you suppose it takes some people so much longer than others?
Well, from what I'm seeing, especially having the chance, in the past several months to contact many fellow NDEers all across the United States and some across the country, they're kind of not afraid, but they're worried about rejection. People thinking, well, you're totally nuts, when actually they're not. They're all very sane. They're trying to, talk about such an unearthly experience, something that's never happened before to them. Mm-hmm. And to get it out and try to do it, especially quickly, it's impossible. You can't. We've talked many times, as you know, and in my opinion, we have barely scratched the surface, Lee. And all the time I've got to chat with you, personally and here online. You can't. It's impossible. You can't take all that and, something so large and try to put it into something so small. It can't be done. So all you can do is just scratch at that surface. And so many people, especially people that had it decades ago when it was much less common, or at least less commonly spoken about, were afraid that if they started talking about it, people would, push away from them. And now, obviously, as you're well aware, and so many others out there are, it's becoming more accepted, and more people love to follow the stories that NDEers can share. I mean, I'm seeing it in volumes every day online, more and more. Every NDE Facebook site is rapidly growing exponentially. From when I first joined them, I screen saved the number of members, and then look at it now, just months later, and it's gone up thousands. I mean, the thousands of emails I've gotten from all across the world. It amazes me, and I'm so grateful. And I want to take a moment to wish a Merry Christmas to all the people that have emailed me, and thank them for their kind words. And some have told me that I've helped to strengthen their faith, or I've inspired them in some way, or that they felt blessed that I even emailed them back. Because I've been through that. I've tried to email and contact people in the past that had known experiences and never heard back from them at all. Because they're so busy in their current life or whatever, and they just never returned my attempt to contact them. So some people are saying, wow, we feel blessed. You emailed us back. In other words, they weren't sure. It's like, well, if I email this Ozman guy, he'll probably go in a pile of emails, and I'll never hear back from him. I'm still way, way behind, because I expected maybe 100 or 200 emails back when you asked me for an email address, and I was wrong. I did not expect several thousand, and it's still going on. But that.
Let me ask you, Oz. For example, when Eben Alexander had his near-death experience, he thought he didn't want to read or hear about anyone else's NDEs until he'd finished writing his first book, Proof of Heaven. You, on the other hand, and I think many others, feel this impulse to connect with other people who've had similar experiences. So how'd you go about doing that? Did you find IONS right away, or did you just get onto Facebook? What was your approach to finding other NDEers?
Well, in previous years, before you and I had the opportunity to meet, I was doing it from a backdoor sense, just kind of Google and find out. And that's how I got in touch with several people that have written books and that are well known, and movies went on to be made. and never heard back from them. And I said, well, let me try a different approach. And, still seeking guidance, and that's what basically indirectly led me to you. And you talked to me about IANDS, and it was at that point that I started following IANDS.
Okay.
And I didn't know it even existed, And so, you opened so many doors. Just our very first meeting alone, opened so many doors that I didn't know were there. And that's...
IANDS has got a really good track record of helping people, starting back, from the beginning in the 70s when Raymond Moody and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and others had, formed IANDS. They've helped people who've struggled with this experience, maybe have been frightened by the experience, maybe had a distressing near-death experience, which is, also a topic that we cover here from time to time. So, but there are other organizations out there too, and I was wondering, when you got onto Facebook, when you started looking on Facebook, you've told me that you discovered many groups out there.
There are several different NDE Facebook sites. Some are catching on more than others. I didn't want to join too many because then I would never have no time because it would just be nonstop. It's pretty close to that now, but I wanted to join the ones that many seem to be joining. I said, there's got to be a reason. And in that process, as you now know, I've met many really good people. Obviously, you've interviewed a couple of people I've met that I knew, even though I had never met them in person, I knew they had a good heart just by, privately chatting with them online and getting, a good glimpse of the person without having ever physically met them. We all look forward to maybe someday getting the chance to actually meet each other face to face. But until then, I was glad that I've met them.
Yeah.
They've helped enlighten me and bless me in a sense, sharing what they've shared with me. So that's one thing that NDEers all have in common. They're very comfortable around other people who have shared some other type of similar experience. Even though each one is unique in its own right, the core messages are right along the same lines because it's the most powerful message that we receive. But we're all unique. Our brains all work slightly different than the person next to us. That's part of the bigger plan. We can't all be identical and exactly like everybody else. And so some people will say, well, they're NDE. We heard the interview or we read it on NDERF or wherever, and they liked certain parts of the bulk of it, but some parts of it just didn't click with them. Well, expect that. That's because we are all unique.
Right, and we tend to interpret differently once we come back. If you're a Christian, you see it in one light, and perhaps as a member of another faith, you see it in another light. I've talked to atheists who have been completely turned around by an experience of encountering the light on the other side.
Unquestionably, it's a huge awakening for everybody. Your eyes have finally been opened. You think they're opened all your life. You're going through your life and down your path, and you think you're really aware of what's going on, but you're missing so much until you have that, essentially an awakening. You find out what you've been missing, or at least a part of what you've been missing, and especially I can personally vouch for that. I learned so much during those experiences that I'm still trying to comprehend it all, 4 years later. Truly a blessing. Everybody says, well, what, did you get cured? Did you leave the hospital in better shape than you went? No, not even close. I could barely stand, barely walk. I had to be taken care of for quite a while because I was incapable of doing it. I could barely move. But that was 4 years ago. Yes, I've come a long way. And the actual miracle is the fact that I'm here. I didn't have no miracle cure or a disease or a tumor or whatever disappeared. I didn't even think of that approach. Maybe if I had asked him while I was there, maybe I would have had a cure. I've got too many artificial parts, I think, to get that kind of a cure.
Some people find they've come back with gifts, gifts of healing, gifts of prophecy, something that they didn't have before they experienced their NDE. And you've probably read or talked to people who've had that experience as well.
But I said, I respond.
Do you feel like you gained anything besides this opening of a spiritual door for yourself?
Yeah, I'm solely a witness, no question about it. I can't deny that title, and a messenger. I'm a humble and simple man. I'm just walking this planet like everybody else next to me. But I have been blessed. And there are gifts that even I'm still finding out about to this day. Things that I may have had all along but never knew it. Mm-hmm. More and more of it's becoming clear. And I think we all have some gifts, but we just haven't had the chance to realize it. And then, obviously, an experience like that will help you learn to realize the gift that's been inside you all along. And you just never brought it out. Nothing happened that made it come out. And then you realize that each and every one of us are gifted. We all are. In one way or another. We just don't realize it yet.
Right. Well, where focus is mainly on getting an education and then getting a job and then getting married and, doing the family thing. And we're really earth oriented. And once in a while, there's a mystical breakthrough and we see that there is we see the importance of the other side.
Yeah, there's so much more out there than the self. I mean, that we're missing because, like you said, life in general, you have these, preconceived things that you have to do. Well, you've got to pay bills, you've got to support your family, you've got to work. And so you concentrate on that. And it's in that concentration that you're missing so much else going on around you. And now that I'm disabled, I have more time to notice the things that I would have missed very clearly. I mean, I'm fascinated by even the simplest things now. I think back, 5 years ago, I was in much better shape. And busy. Would I have even noticed that? No. Odds are I probably would have never even noticed it. I would have walked right by. And now I stop. And, it eats up an awful lot of my time doing that. Sometimes people next to me may get a little uptight because, well, come on, Oz, let's get going. I say, I'm sorry, I was just checking this out. I had never seen it before. And that's the changes. It's a magnitude of changes.
So in a weird sort of way, your disability is a spiritual gift, even though it's a physical problem for you. It's because you're a driven person. I can't imagine. I didn't know you when you were doing your electrical business, but you must have been an amazing worker. But this is in a way taken you away from that energy and redirected the energy into a more contemplative place.
It's a change. I'm on the same path I've always been on, but it's a tweak in that path. Right. Now I'm following a modified path, and doing everything from a totally different angle and a different perspective. I mean, I can't even help but notice some of these changes. It's like, wow, something you do often, I've started doing, changing my mind. I've always been pretty much a logical type person, and everything had a logical sense to it. I've given up because sometimes logic just simply can't apply, and no doubt about it. And I was driven by logic for years, well, decades. And sometimes you got to stop overthinking it, kind of take the brain out of the whole process, and follow the heart instead. There's times that we all need to just listen to our own heart, right, and stop overthinking things and making too big of a deal out of something, or over worrying or getting over upset about something that shouldn't have even really fazed you, right. Overdoing it.
I was going to say the experience has changed a lot of relationships for people as well. In fact, some people come back so different that they wind up getting divorced or having a falling out with some of their family rather than healing and Well, what's been your experience? Has your wife, for instance, said, "Oh, you're much different now that you've gone through this"?
Many times, but and maybe in some different areas, in what she sees as kind of a not so good way, and in other ways a very good way. I know sometimes I drive her crazy, but that's a trend that I've seen online too. And like you said, I've even encountered some NDEs that did get out of a relation or did get divorced because they were driving their wife or husband crazy by talking about it all the time. And we can't help it because it's such an intense memory, it overrides us. I mean, sometimes I try to, put the memory in the backstage because I've got other things I need to do here and concentrate on what it is I'm doing, and I flip right back to that memory. It's very powerful. It's not something that you can just cast aside. It wants front stage. And that's what's probably a contributor to people having a problem in a relationship. For my wife and I, it's helped strengthen a relationship that was already very strong. The thing that gripped me most is that had I not made it, it would have really impacted her, and obviously my family, my daughter, and everybody around me. I didn't realize that, as much. I mean, of course, people are going to grieve, and all that when you leave, but how much it affected them. And so I'm intending to hang around for as long as God's willing for me to be here. And be here, especially for my wife. She relies on me. Yeah. And I rely on her.
I was excited to hear when we talked earlier today that you're already planning to come out to the IONS conference this summer in Denver. It's so powerful when you get into a group of a couple hundred people who've had near-death experiences. The talks are wonderful. And the workshops and the work sessions are terrific, but it's just being there is so energizing for someone who's had an NDE. So I look forward to seeing you out there, Oz.
Well, I so badly wanted to be at the Orlando conference that went by this year, but I just couldn't. There was no way I could get there at that time. But I so longed to be there, and obviously you've told me a bit of it yourself, and it was like, wow. So I think you were blessed for being there, as everybody probably there that did have the chance to make that conference. Mm-hmm. I know Ned's going to be happy that it is in Denver, Colorado, where he's from Colorado. So now instead of having to go all the way to Florida, he can stay right in his home state, in 2017. And once I saw that, I looked at the date, and I said, that's on my birthday. I said, what better gift, For if I look at myself, that's something I want to do very, very badly. And it's like, wow, look at the date, August 6th. I said, what do you know? I know something about August 6th. So that's so I told my wife that same thing. I said, wow, I couldn't imagine a better present. And then being so close to my own daughter and her family at the same time, I said, wow, that's a must do. If I have to walk to Denver, Colorado, by golly, I'm going to find a way to get there. What a walk that would be. I don't think I have that kind of time walking. No. We'll drive. Obviously, as you know, from the neurosurgeries I've had, my neurosurgeon did not recommend me flying because of my equilibrium problems. I would need a doggy bag on the plane, in other words, basically is what you tell me. I have flown in the past, so it's not really a big problem with flying, but I've been advised not to. And I said, that's fine, because we go to Texas, we go to Florida by car. I've driven to both states many times. So I'm okay with it. I just don't know in this condition. I haven't tried any long-term, ride like that, for days at a time on the interstates. But I'm sure I can handle it, especially knowing what's going to happen when I get there. So, I'll leave probably August 1st. Head on down out west to Colorado. I hope. I hope it doesn't fall apart and not be able to make it. And I'll probably see you there, I'm sure.
I'll be there, God willing. And another thing that you and I have talked about is the possibility of starting a local group. I don't know if you've followed some of the local speakers and meetings that IONS conducts around the country, but as far as I know, there's no group operating right now in the state of Maine. Well, and you and I could get one going at the church in Bangor.
Maine is listed under the 33. Why there's 33 out of the 50, I don't know why the other 17 aren't there. In fact, I'm looking at it right now, and if you click on Maine, it comes up to a blank page. It's not. Maine does need to have a local IONS group center. Yes, most definitely. As you and I both know, there's plenty of NDEs or fans of NDEs, people that love to hear from them here in Maine. The problem is getting to them, reaching them. But yes, I instead of Maine just being there and you click it and it's a dead link, Maine needs to have at least one group. Many of the states, the larger states with big cities, have several. I went to Wisconsin, which is also listed there. That was blank. But all the other states, obviously California's got 6 different groups. Arizona's got 2. Alabama's got, a couple. I said, well, Maine, you click it and there's none. There needs to be one here, Lee.
Yeah.
You and I both agree with that. So I think it's something we've got to look into and see if we can't get it started and reach out. I have started to meet some of the Maine NDEs, but they're from scattered. Maine, as most people know, is a very big state. So yes. We're talking the people that would have to drive hundreds of miles to get to the local city. But they'd be willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. People who've had NDEs that I've talked to in the hospital, for example, whenever I mention the possibility of a local group, they're very enthusiastic. Oz, let me ask you this. If someone came to you right now and said they just experienced an NDE and they were confused by it, what sort of advice would you give them?
It takes time. Try to process it. Try to be comfortable with what you experienced. And they're trying to understand it. I know when I first came out of the coma and was first talking, obviously, with the doctors and the nurses, and I kept telling everybody I'm rebooting, reprogramming. I was trying to process what I just experienced at that time, plus, share some time visiting with my family who were there to visit me. And it's hard. It's hard because you can't help but wonder, what happened? What just happened? And it can be overwhelming. For me, it was extremely. The first words I spoke once I was extubated was overwhelmed. And this is 4 years and a month or so later, I'm still overwhelmed. So, and most NDEs are by that experience. So if somebody has just recently had one, it's going to take time. Just relax, and explore your thoughts and your memories of what you experienced and start trying to organize it. IONS has found through the research by Mays and other associates that it can take, on average, 3 years to start really getting a good grip on it. And I tend to agree. That's about when I finally started, processing it and straightening it out and trying to figure out exactly what I experienced, what happened, what went on there. And then realizing that this is happening all across the world. As you know, like you keep saying, 700 people on average a day here in the United States alone. Yeah. It's going on. So, yes, everybody, there's going to be a lot more, as you and I know. It's happening every day. They just need to relax and not, try to, it can tend to try to freak you out in a way, at first, because you're still trying to understand it yourself, let alone try to even begin talking about it. And that's why many, as you said, have gone 10, 20, 30 years before they even start talking about it at all.
Right. Hey, Oz, we're just about out of time, and you said you had a little poem you wanted to read.
I don't know if we have the time for it.
Well, if it's short enough, why don't you take a shot at it?
It's about Christmas. And Christmas is forever, not just for one day. It's for loving, sharing, giving are not to be put away, like the bells, lights, and tinsels in some box up on the shelf. The good you do to others is good you do to yourself. Merry Christmas. And that's a very powerful message. That's part of the message that I got, loving others, be good to others, help others. You know that well. You help so many people. I don't think you even realize how many people you've helped, how truly you have helped others.
Well, and, thanks. We all do what we can. And I guess for today we've done what we can. Oz, perhaps you'd like to tell our audience how they could get in touch with you if they want to email you?
At that same email, ozman50@gmail.com. I would love to hear from people from Maine that may be interested in IANS groups starting up here or love to attend one. Let us know, by all means.
All right. Well, listen, folks, if you'd like to listen again to this or any of our past shows, just go to our website at nderadio.org. And for more information about the work of IANS, you can check out iands.org. And thanks again to Oz, and tune in next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.